To understand why loneliness torments modern humans, we must first travel back to a world before cities, before nations, before screens. A world where survival was fragile and every human life depended on the group. For hundreds of thousands of years, our ancestors lived in small tribes, 50, perhaps 100 people at most. They hunted together, gathered food, built shelters, and raised children as a community. Life was dangerous, but no one faced it alone. The tribe was not just companionship. It was survival itself. In this ancient world, loneliness was more than an emotion. It was a warning signal, as urgent as hunger or thirst. To be separated from the tribe was not just sad, it was deadly. A lone human in the wild could not survive for long. The feeling of loneliness evolved to drive us back toward connection, to remind us that isolation was a threat. In this way, loneliness was once a gift, a survival instinct, written deep into our biology. But history changed everything. 10,000 years ago, humans began building permanent settlements. Agriculture gave rise to property, hierarchies, and new social orders. The tribe grew into the village into the city into the empire. Slowly, the tight-knit bonds of kinship loosened. A man could now live among thousands, even millions, yet still feel unseen. The human heart, designed for intimacy with a small tribe, now struggled to adapt to vast and anonymous societies. Ancient philosophers knew this paradox well. Aristotle called humans zoon politikon, political animals, destined for community. And yet he warned that those who lived apart were either beasts or gods. The Stoics, the Buddhists, and later the Christians all grappled with this tension. How to live meaningfully among the masses, without losing the intimate bonds that once defined human life. In the Middle Ages, loneliness took on a spiritual meaning. To withdraw in solitude was not always despair, but sometimes devotion. Monks and mystics sought the silence of isolation, believing it brought them closer to God. And yet, the ordinary person was rarely alone. Families slept in shared rooms, worked side by side in fields, and gathered in churches that anchored communities. Loneliness was felt, but it was not yet the chronic epidemic we know today. Then came the modern age. The Industrial Revolution shattered the old rhythms of life. Families were broken apart as men, women, and children left for factories. Cities grew into monstrous machines of labor, where anonymity became the new normal. The tribe was gone, and in its place, the crowd. A crowd in which one could feel more alone than ever. It is no coincidence that around this time, poets and novelists began to speak of emptiness in new ways. Mary Shelley, writing of isolation, through Frankenstein's monster, Dickens painting portraits of alienated urban life. Later, existentialists like Kierkegaard, Nietzsche, and Sartre would describe modern man as fundamentally alone, not just socially, but cosmically. Loneliness was no longer just the fear of physical exile. It became existential exile, the terrifying awareness that even surrounded by millions, one could feel abandoned in the universe itself. And here we stand, heirs to this history. We carry the biology of tribes, the longings of ancient kinship, yet we live in societies so vast and fragmented that our instincts betray us. Loneliness has changed. What once protected us has now turned against us. And in the modern age, it is no longer the exception. It is the rule. Loneliness is not simply being alone. It is possible to be surrounded by thousands, to live with a family, to share an office, and still feel it. Loneliness is not the absence of people. It is the absence of connection. A hollow space between self and other, where words no longer touch, where eyes no longer meet, where presence feels like absence. Psychologists describe loneliness as a subjective experience, a mismatch between the relationships we crave and the ones we actually have. Unlike hunger or thirst, which demand a physical response, loneliness eats away at perception itself. It is the feeling of being unseen, unheard, unvalued, not invisible in body, but invisible in meaning. Neurologically, loneliness activates the same alarm systems as physical pain. MRI scans show that social rejection lights up the brain's pain centers. To be cut off, to be ignored, to feel unwanted, the body registers it as an injury, as though the skin itself were burning. This is why loneliness is not just unpleasant, it is torment, and the body does not remain passive. Chronic loneliness triggers a cascade of stress responses. Elevated cortisol, disrupted sleep, weakened immunity. Over time, it erodes not only the mind, but the flesh. Loneliness can shorten lifespan as much as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It increases the risk of heart disease, stroke, dementia, depression. The silent room becomes not only a prison, but a grave. But the deepest wound of loneliness is not physical. It is existential. To be lonely is to confront the terrifying suspicion that one's existence makes no difference to the world. That if you vanished, no one would notice. This is why loneliness so easily slips into nihilism, the feeling that nothing matters, that life itself is stripped of meaning. Philosopher Martin Heidegger spoke of being toward death, the unavoidable awareness of our mortality. But for the lonely, this awareness is doubled. Death is not just an endpoint in time. It is felt in the present, as though one is already erased. Loneliness becomes a rehearsal of death itself, existing in silence, fading in plain sight. And yet paradoxically, loneliness is not a flaw in the human design. It is proof of our design. If we did not ache in isolation, if we did not suffer when unseen, it would mean we were never meant for each other. The very pain of loneliness is evidence of our nature, social, tribal, interwoven. But the modern world complicates this truth. Technology promises connection, yet often delivers the opposite. 1,000 friends, yet no one to call. 1,000,000 voices online, yet none who truly listen. Psychologists call this the paradox of connected loneliness. The more connected we appear, the more disconnected we feel. And here is the cruelest twist. Loneliness alters perception. Studies show that the lonely interpret the world differently. They become hypervigilant, more likely to perceive others as threats, more sensitive to rejection. In this way, loneliness reinforces itself. The lonely retreat to protect themselves. But in retreat, they grow lonelier still. But within this tragedy lies a secret. The fact that loneliness hurts so profoundly reveals what we were made for. We were not built for solitude, for isolation, for endless scrolling in darkened rooms. We were built for touch, for gaze, for presence. Loneliness, at its core, is not simply a curse. It is a signal, a haunting whisper from our biology that says, you are meant for more than this. Never in human history have we been more connected, and never in human history have we felt so profoundly alone. The paradox defines our age. Millions of digital conversations, yet a famine of genuine connection. We carry entire worlds in our pockets, yet our inner worlds collapse from neglect. Loneliness today is not the result of physical isolation. It is the result of spiritual isolation in the midst of physical proximity. Cities crowd us together, yet walls invisible as glass separate us. Our apartments are stacked like boxes, one above the other, and still the silence between neighbors remains deafening. This transformation began with industrialization. For thousands of years, humans lived in small tribes, villages, and clans. Relationships were interwoven with survival itself. You farmed together, you built together, you raised children together. Life was not lived as an individual, but as part of a whole. Then came the machine. Factories replaced farms. Wages replaced communal labor. Neighbors became strangers. Workers left their families to serve the rhythm of industry. The first fracture in human togetherness had begun. The 20th century added another layer: consumerism. Loneliness became a market. Products promised love, belonging, self-esteem. Happiness was packaged, sold, and delivered, but always with an empty aftertaste. We replaced intimacy with consumption, believing that if we bought enough, followed enough, displayed enough, the emptiness would finally be filled. Instead, it widened, and then the internet. At first, it appeared to be salvation: instant communication, virtual community, social media platforms declaring, "You are never alone again." But the promise concealed a cruel reality. Instead of connection, we found comparison. Instead of presence, performance. Instead of intimacy, illusion. Psychologists now warn, social media creates a distorted mirror. We see others not as they are, but as they curate themselves to be. Perfect lives, perfect relationships, perfect happiness. And in contrast, our own lives feel inadequate, small, unworthy. This is not connection. It is theater. A theater that leaves us applauding with empty hands. Loneliness in the digital age is not passive. It is engineered. Platforms are designed to keep us hooked, not connected. They exploit the brain's reward systems, offering small doses of validation, while ensuring the deeper hunger for real intimacy remains unsatisfied. It is like drinking seawater. The more you consume, the thirstier you become. The consequences are visible. Studies show that Gen Z, the most digitally connected generation in history, also reports the highest levels of loneliness, anxiety, and despair. We are raising a generation that knows how to swipe, but not how to hold a hand. That can broadcast their lives to millions, but cannot whisper their fears to one. Erich Fromm once wrote that modern man is alienated from nature, from others, and even from himself. In our pursuit of progress, we gained machines, technology, wealth, but we lost belonging. The village became the suburb, the community became the workplace, and the person became a profile. And so the modern world gives us the cruelest irony. We have built networks vast enough to span the globe, yet we cannot bridge the gap between one soul and another sitting right beside us. Loneliness is not just a private suffering. It is a weapon. A population divided, isolated, stripped of solidarity is a population easier to control. Tyranny thrives not in the company of friends, but in the silence of the disconnected. History shows us this again and again. Totalitarian regimes do not merely censor speech, they censor connection. They destroy the bonds of family, community, religion, culture. The Soviet gulags, the Nazi concentration camps, the Chinese cultural revolution, each not only punished the body, but severed the soul from its human ties. The goal was not only obedience, but atomization, to make every individual stand alone. Why? Because an isolated individual is weak. They cannot resist. They cannot organize. They cannot whisper to another, "This is wrong." They are left only with the voice of authority, the loudspeaker of the state, the broadcast of propaganda, the endless repetition of one truth: you are powerless. You are alone. You need us. But power has evolved. No longer is control, maintained only by force. In the modern world, it is maintained by distraction and disconnection. We are divided not by walls of concrete, but by walls of information. Each of us locked in our own echo chambers, curated by algorithms that learn our fears and feed them back to us. We no longer need guards or prison bars, because our isolation is self-imposed. Political philosopher Hannah Arendt once warned, "The ideal subject of totalitarian rule is not the fanatic, but the isolated person who believes in nothing and belongs to no one." Today, loneliness creates the same fertile soil. When people feel alienated, abandoned, invisible, they become desperate for meaning. And that desperation can be exploited by governments, by corporations, by anyone offering belonging in exchange for obedience. This is why lonely people are vulnerable to radicalization, to manipulation, to dangerous ideologies. When the human hunger for connection is denied, it seeks substitutes, even poisonous ones. A cult, a conspiracy, a demagogue, all whisper the same seduction: join us, and you will never be alone again. But this promise is an illusion. It is not connection, but dependency. A leash disguised as a lifeline. Once people surrender their loneliness to power, they surrender their freedom as well. And make no mistake, the loneliness crisis of today is no accident. A society of deeply connected, deeply empathetic people cannot be controlled. But a society of fragmented, anxious, self-absorbed individuals. That society consumes endlessly. That society obeys. That society forgets. How to unite? This was the insight of Bernays, the pioneer of modern propaganda. If you could manipulate the masses not by force, but by desire, then loneliness could be turned into profit. Isolation could be industrialized, advertising, entertainment, even politics. All would not cure loneliness, but feed it, exploit it, monetize it. And so we live in an age where loneliness is no longer a tragic accident. It is a business model. Our emptiness is profitable. Our isolation is useful. And the deeper the void inside us grows, the easier it becomes for those in power to fill it with their narratives, their products, their control. Loneliness is not only the absence of human connection, it is the presence of manipulation, a tool sharpened by those who understood its power. And until we see it clearly, until we recognize that our emptiness is not just personal but political, we remain captives in the silence of our own making. Loneliness is not only a feeling, it is not just a passing sadness. It is a disease of the body, a silent predator that leaves scars deeper than we imagine. When we are cut off from human connection, our biology begins to turn against us. For millions of years, connection was survival. A lone human in the wild meant danger, predators, starvation, death. Our nervous system evolved to scream in alarm when we were isolated. That alarm has never left us. Today, it pulses through our veins whenever we feel alone. Our body believes it is in mortal danger. Loneliness activates the fight-or-flight system. Cortisol, the stress hormone, surges. Blood pressure rises. The heart works harder, the immune system weakens. Inflammation spreads like fire through the body. This is why loneliness is not just emotional pain, it is biological warfare. Prolonged isolation increases the risk of heart disease, stroke, dementia, even cancer. Some researchers estimate chronic loneliness is as deadly as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. But the damage goes deeper. Loneliness rewires the brain itself. MRI scans reveal that in lonely people, regions linked to pain and threat detection light up. The brain begins to treat isolation as a wound, one that never heals. This constant alertness makes the world feel hostile. Strangers seem more threatening. Even neutral faces look suspicious. Over time, loneliness breeds paranoia. This is the cruel paradox. Loneliness makes us withdraw further. Our body, desperate for connection, floods us with fear that pushes others away. The very instinct designed to keep us safe becomes the trap that keeps us alone. The numbers are staggering. Studies by the National Institute on Aging reveal that chronic loneliness increases the risk of premature death by 26%. In older adults, it accelerates cognitive decline, shrinking memory centers of the brain. In young adults, it manifests as anxiety, self-harm, and addiction. Isolation is not only an epidemic of the mind, it is an epidemic of the flesh. Loneliness even changes us at the genetic level. Research at UCLA found that isolated people show increased activity in genes linked to inflammation and decreased activity in genes that fight infection. The body is preparing for injury. But no injury ever comes. Instead, the inflammation lingers, corroding the body from within. A constant civil war, triggered by emptiness. Think about this. Your body cannot tell the difference between being chased by a predator and being abandoned by people you love. To your biology, loneliness is an existential threat. And so, every cell, every organ, every neuron bends itself toward survival, at the cost of your health, your sanity, your future. And yet, society often dismisses loneliness as weakness. We are told to toughen up, to be independent, to rely on no one. But the science tells a different story. Connection is not a luxury, it is medicine. Isolation is not freedom, it is poison. Our bodies know this, even if our culture refuses to admit it. Loneliness kills, not with a gun, not with a knife, but with silence. It seeps into our blood, our brains, our very DNA. It corrodes us slowly, invisibly, until the body can take no more. And unless we recognize it for what it is, a biological emergency, we will continue to let it claim lives in the shadows. Loneliness is a wound. But unlike other wounds, its cure does not lie in medicine or machines. The cure lies in something far more ancient, far more human: connection. Just as isolation breaks the body and mind, connection has the power to restore them. Science confirms what our hearts already know. When we feel truly connected, when someone looks into our eyes and sees us, our biology changes. The stress hormone cortisol drops, the heart slows. Oxytocin, sometimes called the bonding chemical, floods our system, lowering blood pressure, healing wounds, strengthening immunity. Connection literally stitches us back together. Loneliness shrinks the brain, connection grows it. Studies show that strong relationships increase resilience, improve memory, and even lengthen lifespan. Harvard's 80-year-long study on human happiness came to a striking conclusion. It wasn't money or fame or power that predicted a good life. It was relationships. The warmth of connection was the single greatest factor in human well-being. But connection is not about numbers. You can be surrounded by 1,000 followers and still feel empty. True connection is rare, delicate. It is not built on constant noise, but on recognition, the feeling of being seen and accepted for who you are. This is why even a single friendship, even a single moment of intimacy, can pull someone back from the edge of despair. One text, one call, one hand reaching out, can change the trajectory of a life. Connection heals because it reminds us of the truth we keep forgetting, that we are not meant to carry existence alone. Across cultures, connection has always been medicine. Indigenous tribes practiced rituals of communal storytelling, where voices merged into a single heartbeat of belonging. In ancient Greece, friendship was considered a form of virtue, as essential as courage or wisdom. Even in the darkest times of history, prisons, wars, plagues, humans survived not by strength alone, but by the bonds they formed with each other. It is no coincidence that authoritarian regimes throughout history sought to isolate individuals, to separate them from community, to shatter trust, to pit neighbor against neighbor. The void of loneliness is deep, but it is not endless. Connection is the bridge, and every time we reach across the silence, every time we choose to see and be seen, we step closer to healing. The body heals, the mind heals, humanity heals. And in that healing, we find our way home. In the age of hyperconnectivity, the world is paradoxically lonelier than ever. Social media promises friendship, yet feeds isolation. Messaging apps make instant communication possible, yet we struggle to share our true selves. We are quite literally alone together. Technology has given us the illusion of presence, but it often replaces genuine human contact with superficial interaction. A text cannot replace a touch. An emoji cannot replace a smile. The digital world, with all its connectivity, creates a veneer of community, masking the yawning emptiness beneath. Studies reveal a disturbing trend. Despite unprecedented levels of online interaction, rates of loneliness, anxiety, and depression have surged. In America alone, nearly half of adults report feeling lonely, and rates are even higher among young people. The more we scroll, the more we compare, the more we disconnect. Social media exploits our psychology. Every like, every notification triggers a small burst of dopamine, convincing our brains that we are connected, that we matter. Yet these digital signals are fleeting, shallow, and often misleading. The hunger for real connection remains unsatisfied, leaving a void that no number of followers can fill. This paradox extends beyond technology. Modern urban life, designed for efficiency, often isolates us. Open-plan offices reduce physical barriers, but increase emotional distance. Cities, despite being densely populated, can be emotionally sterile. We are surrounded by others, yet unseen, unheard, alone. Even work culture contributes. Hustle, productivity, and achievement are glorified, but relationships are often sacrificed. Our ancestors survived in tribes, relying on intimate bonds for survival. Today, many live in apartments with no neighbors, working long hours with minimal social contact. Survival may no longer depend on community, but our psychological health does. The paradox is clear. We have never been more connected, and yet, we have never felt more alone. This isn't simply a matter of personal choice. It is a societal design. Algorithms, urban planning, and cultural expectations all conspire to create the lonely modern human. But understanding the paradox is the first step towards solving it. By recognizing the illusion of online connection and prioritizing genuine interactions, humans can reclaim the intimacy that technology cannot replicate. The remedy is neither simple nor instantaneous, but it begins with awareness, seeing through the digital mirage to the real human need underneath. As Nietzsche warned, modern humans risk a quiet decay, not from disease or famine, but from the slow erosion of social bonds. Alone together, we are vulnerable. Yet, even small acts of presence, sitting with a friend, sharing a meal, looking someone in the eyes, can pierce the veil of isolation and restore meaning. The paradox of our age is stark. Connection has never been easier, and yet loneliness has never been more profound. The question remains, will we let technology define our relationships, or will we reclaim the timeless power of presence? Loneliness is not just a feeling, it is a signal, a warning that our connections, the very threads that bind our humanity, are fraying. But the story doesn't end here. Understanding the depths of our isolation is only the beginning. The next step is reclaiming the connections that give life its richness, purpose, and meaning. Rebuilding connection requires intention. It demands presence over distraction, empathy over performance. Every meaningful interaction starts with a choice: to see someone, to listen, to be fully there. Small acts, a shared smile, a genuine conversation, a helping hand, can ripple outward, transforming our internal and external worlds. Psychology tells us that humans are wired for relationship. Social bonds regulate stress, improve health, and create a sense of purpose. Loneliness can shrink the brain, impair cognition, and weaken immunity. But connection, true connection, heals, strengthens, and nourishes. Across history, humans have built meaning through shared experiences. Ancient rituals, tribal gatherings, and collective storytelling reinforced bonds and shaped identity. In today's fast-paced, hyper-connected yet emotionally distant world, we must deliberately create these spaces where vulnerability is safe and presence is valued. Technology is not the enemy. It is a tool, and like any tool, its impact depends on how we wield it. Instead of letting it dictate our relationships, we can use it to enhance them. Scheduling real-life meetups, maintaining long-distance bonds, sharing meaningful experiences rather than passive scrolling. The journey out of loneliness begins within. Self-awareness, reflection, and self-compassion are essential. By understanding our own needs, setting boundaries, and nurturing our emotional health, we become more capable of forming deep, authentic bonds with others. And yet, the power of connection is collective. One person reaching out can spark a chain reaction, influencing communities, workplaces, and families. Each act of presence, each gesture of empathy, chips away at the isolation that pervades modern life. As Psychology CMX, I've poured hours into exploring these truths for you, my viewers. I create these videos not for fame, not for fortune,
but to shed light on the hidden psychology that shapes our lives. And now, I ask you, if you can, subscribe to the channel.
Leave your thoughts in the comments, tell me which country you're watching from, and if this video touched you, share it with someone who needs it. Loneliness may be the shadow of our age, but connection is the light we can reclaim. By choosing presence, empathy, and authentic engagement, we not only heal ourselves, we redefine what it means to live fully in a modern world. The choice is yours. Will you step forward and connect, or remain alone together?